Hello, welcome back to the West London Sport YouTube channel. I'm joined again today by Ben Kosky, Ian McCullough and Kevin Gallen to talk about QPR's 1-1 draw with Wycombe on Saturday, as well as looking ahead to the game against Swansea on Boxing Day, which is obviously now a lot more important than it would have been had they beat Wycombe. Kevin, after what you saw from QPR at Wycombe and the way the team is currently being set up and currently playing with the manager in charge, do you think they're good enough to stay in this division?
Well, not currently the way they're playing because we're not picking up enough points. Is it right? It's 1 win in 10. Is that right? Am I right in saying that?
No wins in 7, certainly.
So if you carry on with that form, no, you're going to get relegated. The way we played against Wycombe, playing like that, we're not going to pick up enough points because, excuse me, Wycombe, I have to say, they're very much a League One team, and I couldn't say they had one player that could get into QPR's team, and that's not a hard thing to do at the moment. The way we played against Wycombe, I thought very, very poor going forward. Didn't really create any chances. The goal was a poor mistake. It was a good cross, but the centre half panicked. It was going to go into their keeper's hands, and that was really, I mean. Can I think of another clear-cut chance that QPR created? Not really. Where Wycombe, really, it was a Cathcart should have scored after 3 or 4 minutes. Dickey done tremendously well to just block one on the line when I think it was Horgan went through in early in the second half, and then Cathcart missed a header, and then they scored. So playing like that, QPR will not stay in the division because they won't pick up enough points. They need to start improving big time and quickly, and there's some tough games coming up.
Is that the frustrating thing, that when you look at the team on paper and you compare it to Wycombe's, that they should get the 3 points, and they should, we spoke about last week about the squad probably getting weaker than it was last season, but you look at that team and you say it's probably still good enough to stay in the division. Is that the kind of frustrating thing, that they should be getting more results than they are, but for whatever reason the way they're playing just isn't reflecting that?
Look, if you look on the paper, that team, QPR, is far a superior team than Wycombe's. But away from home, Winter, in bad form. But saying that, they're in bad form as well. So there's no the excuse. There seems to be a lack of confidence. Osayi-Samuel looks not the player he was. Even at the start of the season, he looked, I mean, if there was an opportunity for Osayi-Samuel to get the better of a fullback, it was on Saturday, because Joe Jacobson, great set pieces and whipping balls in, but can't run. And Osayi-Samuel can run, and he didn't get at him enough to cause Wycombe's defence enough problems. I don't know what's going to happen. Lyndon Dykes, I thought they would have changed it and played Bon up front. I still think Bon has to have a go because Dykes didn't do enough. A few good layoffs in the first half. Didn't really win his headers, didn't back in, didn't make himself a nuisance for their centre-halves. I think there needs a change. I think he might need a rest. I said that the other day, he needs a rest. Let's give him Corley Bon a chance. It's a £2 million signing and he's never played. What's going on?
I mean, the team certainly is weaker than last season. Even though that team should be beating Wycombe, do you think with the January transfer window approaching, how important is it that they get a couple of new additions in a couple of areas where they're certainly weak on the pitch?
100%. They have to be. They've surely got targets. Now it depends what happens with Osayi-Samuel. What do you do? What do you reckon that the offer will be from a football club to accept? 1 million, 2 million? Me personally, I'd keep him, because if we get relegated, it costs you 7 million going down to League One. So what do you do? Lad, what do you reckon? Keep him, stay up, or lose him, get 1 million, 2 million, but get relegated? That's a chance, and lose 7 million.
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because,
my opinion, you keep him and let him go on a free, because getting relegated will cost you more.
Because obviously Mark Warburton spoke a lot about not wanting to let players leave the club for free, and that was a big reason behind why Ryan Manning was let go in the summer. But I completely agree with you. I think he's obviously the main attacking threat that they've got, probably him and Ilias Chair combined. So if they let Bright go in January and that ends up sending them down, it's, you'd rather just sacrifice the transfer fee for staying in the division.
Unless they've got a replacement lined up. But what if you take Osayi-Samuel out of the team? You are taking out the pace. He's the only one in that team who can run past someone for real and stretch the opposition. He hasn't really been doing it much of late, especially on Saturday. I thought he was poor, and I thought he had a big chance against Wycombe to, really do some good things, and it didn't really happen for him. But you take him out of the team, you need a ready-made replacement.
Joe, I want everyone's
those kind of things. So hopefully they have if he does leave. Me personally, I'd keep him.
Yeah, I'd like to get everyone's thoughts on this, but obviously we just spoke about the January transfer window. Kevin, first of all, where do you think they most need to strengthen on the pitch?
I think midfield, and I think fullbacks, really.
What about you, Ben?
Yeah, I'd certainly go along with, as Kevin said, fullbacks. That's definitely an issue, particularly on the left side. I just think the whole issue, I mean, we spoke about this the other day, of whether Osayi-Samuel stays or goes. And if he were to go, that to me potentially opens up an opportunity to actually change your system and play a different formation rather than looking to replace him, which I think would be very difficult. I think the other thing to keep in mind is, fans get very overexcited about transfer windows. And people will know my general opinions on the transfer window. I'm not a big fan of the system as a whole. And I think people have got to keep in mind that the more players you bring in a transfer window is not necessarily a good thing. That's not to say you shouldn't bring in any, but for me, I think whether your main man stays or goes, you're probably, I think, looking at 2 to 3 players to come in. That would be the way I would approach it. That, of course, is assuming that you're sticking with your plan, if you like, and your manager. Because if you're not, if you're looking to make a change there, which I'm sure we'll come on to that issue, then suddenly you rip up your plan, and a new man is going to want perhaps a different system and different players who can bring different things to the table. So there it goes out of the window. But what I would just say is, let's assume that transfer window being open, that's the solution to all the problems, because sometimes I think it can create more problems than it actually solves, if anything.
Do you agree with that, Ian?
Normally I would, but this time they have to reinforce in January. They're going to go down otherwise. They were already thin at centre midfield at the start of the season, and then they lose Amos for the season, so they're now positively anemic. They need a body in there. They need someone who can do the job better than Cameron and Bob, to be brutally honest. Again, we touched on it last week. The problems between defence and midfield were there for all to see for that equalising goal for Wycombe. They just needed to grind that one out on Saturday. Just get a scruffy 1-0, get out of there. But they nearly did it. They dealt with everything that Wycombe threw at them quite capably. But it was a poor goal. Started from not keeping the ball up front, and then they quick throwing from Wycombe, and they've gone across the field, and the geezer put one in from the edge of the box, and it's the same old story. They need a left back desperately need a left back, and touching on the Bright stuff, Bright, you have to keep him. Everything Kevin says, I agree with. They've already let Ryan Manning go for stubborn reasons, really. You win and lose sometimes in Bosman. For what they've lost, letting him go creatively wise, they're struggling. He was a big part of that team last year. The way he got forward, he good crosser of the ball, good deliverer of free kicks. He dovetailed well with Ilias Chair when they played, and they're really missing him because the guy they got playing left back at the moment, I'm sorry, he's just not good enough. I don't see what he does. They're almost, I hate to say it, I don't like hanging out players to dry, especially young players, but you're playing with 10 men almost with him in the side.
Ian, and I agree with you. Why give him a 4-year contract?
100%. I can't see it. I mean,
baffled by it. Surely a 2-year contract. It's not as if Barcelona are going to come in for him. I mean, 2-year contract would have done.
Yeah. I agree.
That a political move to say, look, to the owners, look, we've got players coming through, that we're giving them 4-year contracts now. This is how we've changed it. Because for me, even a 1-year contract was enough. I agree totally with the left back. I actually thought there's no aggression there. He's a nice runner, but just there's nothing there. Do you know what I mean?
I just think for me, you look at it from the first minute of the game, he's got the ball and straight away his instinct is just to get rid of it. And he's humped the aimless ball up front for Dykes. He's come back. Straight away they've got a set piece from a throw-in. Now, they must have been saying before the game, don't give away cheap throw-ins, don't give away cheap free kicks. He's diving in, making, reckless tackles, giving away free kicks. And he's just like, he looks like he doesn't believe he can play at this level.
Yeah.
I don't understand why he's got a 4-year contract. That's the honest. I agree with you. But they do need they need bodies. They do. They need a body. I thought Dykes did okay on Saturday. I thought it was the first time I've seen him for a while. He's actually dropping deep and trying to make chances for himself because he wasn't getting any service. He was dropping back into the middle of the park and picking the ball up and at least trying to create something. But strikers need service, and he's not getting any service.
True, and I have to say, my man in the match with Dickie, I thought he was excellent.
Yeah.
Played really well. Won every header. Nearly scored with a good header, and cleared one off the line. I thought he had a very strong game again. He's a sort of a bright spot of the season so far.
I think a lot of Sorry, go on, Ben.
Yeah, one of the points, just coming back to the issue of the transfer window and new players and so on. And I'd be interested to get Kevin's thoughts on this particularly. I think, again, that there's a lot of thinking that the solution is always signing more players. Sometimes I think, certainly in QPR history, you can say sometimes the answer is partly actually coaching, is getting more out of the players you've got. And particularly someone like Jerry Francis, who Kevin played under, I think was superb at that. For me, there were an awful lot of players in both Jerry's times as manager. I mean, perhaps first time around, I would say he took some average players and turned them into top class ones, internationals. Second time around, I think there are a number of players who weren't really performing when he came in. And gradually you were getting better performances out of them. And sometimes that could be a change of position. That could be a change of tactics, whatever it is. And I mean, someone for me who comes to mind with that would be someone like Ian Barraclough from that time, who I think Jerry turned into a very, very competent player. What are your thoughts on that? Is there some scope for, while saying, yeah, we need to recruit, but sometimes perhaps there's players you can work with and actually maybe get them playing in a different role or doing different things? Performances.
I know what you're saying, Ben. But these players now have been with this manager for, I don't know, over a year, but then the ones that come in the summer now, a different approach, maybe a different tactic. And I'm talking striker-wise. How are we going to get the best out of Macaulay-Bonne, even though I haven't seen much of him? How is Warburton going to get the best out of Lyndon Dykes? Now, I feel they have to play a little bit more direct, more crosses into the box earlier, quicker, make the build-up a lot quicker. But I just don't think the manager will change the style of play. So it's a difficult one. Now, if you had to change your manager and Jerry was to come in January, then you'd see a completely different style of football, completely different tactics, and then you get a different type of performance out of these players. But the way we're playing, I don't know, I sort of look at Mark Warburton on the side of the pitch, and I just get the feeling his heart's not really in it at the moment. I don't know, he's not giving, the vibes ain't really are great. He's just sitting there, he ain't really saying anything. His match interviews are pretty much the same week in, week out. And I don't know if he's got the heart for it. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he can, over this Christmas period, get some results because we need them, and we need them quick. But I know what you're saying about coaching. I do know what you're saying.
I think we were talking about, young players being given big contracts and players who are running out of contract being let go, like in Ryan Manning's case. I think a lot of that probably comes down to principle. It's almost like we spent a lot of money when we shouldn't have when we were in the Premier League, paying Jose Bosingwa, 100,000, whatever it was a week, and a lot more players, Chris Samba, those sort of players. And it's now sort of like we're not going to be taking the mick out of, essentially. We're not going to let these players leave for nothing when we could get a transfer fee for them, which I do kind of understand, and I understand wanting to bring your own players through. But at the end of the day, the players you're bringing through have to be good enough to play at that level. And if the transfer fee isn't worth the loss of that player for that season, it's like, do you just kind of take the hit almost and say, okay, well, it gives us another year to get a replacement in that, rather than trying to rush it.
Okay, so getting £300,000 for Ryan Manning at the start of the season, would it have been better off keeping him?
I think so, but I suppose this is coronavirus, isn't it, as well? They're blaming it on that, sort of the impact of that, which I get, but it's...
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, get relegated to £7 million, 300 grand, 7 million.
And I think as well, like Rangers have benefited from Bosman's. Luke Freeman was signed for a similar fee because he was out of contract at Bristol City. Josh Scowen, these types of players that are picked up, good players, good serviceable players. You win some, you lose some. If he goes, he goes. But as you say, for what he brought to the table last season, to let him walk away for 200 grand, 300, whatever it was, it does seem a little bit folly now.
I think at the same time, I mean, I'm in agreement with what everyone is saying, that you've got to take the view that you can't get relegated this season, because you look at the situation. I mean, obviously, how many years ago now? It would be 20 years ago. The end of this season, QPR were relegated to the third tier. Took 3 years to come back then. I think it's got harder now. And if you look at the teams that have come up from League One last season, they're all finding it tough. They're probably not all going to go back down, but they're all finding it tough. And I think potentially it could be a very hard ask. So I do agree that whatever you judge to be the right thing to stay in the division, whether that's keep Bright Osayi-Samuel and then losing for nothing in the summer, then you do have to do it. And I think the other point to make is you look at the maths. Currently table, I think 20 games played, 20 points in the bag. Well, 1 point per game over the course of the season, you might get lucky. That might be enough to keep you up, but most seasons probably not. You're going to need a little bit more than that. So I would agree that whatever they judge to be necessary to stay in the division, that is the road you've got to go down as well.
And you're talking obviously, Ben, about getting back into the Championship and then trying to stay up again. But League One's it's not easy. It's we've seen with Sunderland, they're a massive club and they can't get out of the division. When Leeds went down, it took them a while to get back out of League One back to the Championship. So big clubs, bigger than even, dare I say, QPRs, stay down there for long periods of time. Tricky.
League One now has a wage cap for everyone now. Don't go above 2.5 million on your wages.
Yeah.
So
makes it even more difficult.
So it's a bit of a level playing field where Sunderland are a massive club, but they can't spend that much more than anyone else to get out of that division. So it is tough, very tough. And there is some big teams. You've got Ipswich, Portsmouth, Charlton, Sunderland, Hull.
Massive team.
Still, I don't know about that. They were League Two. No, but see, you got some decent, proper Championship clubs in there, or even Premiership clubs by stadium size and support. And that's what I say. Got to stay up. I thought at the start of the season, I thought, this season's a bit of a mulligan where you had Sheffield Wednesday on a points deduction. With no disrespect, Rotherham, Barnsley were always going to struggle. I thought Luton would struggle, but they're not. Coventry, I thought, do you know what? Wycombe, I thought, QPR, they can't. If they get relegated this year, that will be terrible. But now we're proper looking over our shoulders and we need to start getting some points on the board quick. And coming on to the Swansea game, it's a tough game, but it's a game where they play a very similar style of football to us. And that might help us, as in they play a certain way and we play a certain way. It's just a case of who's going to play that system better on the day.
Yeah, I don't think Rangers will go down. I think they will pull it out. I think this is not a terrible side. They're not playing well at the minute with a few changes. I think there is some talent in this team. Yeah, it was very stodgy on Saturday. Very stodgy. I mean, again, I'll keep banging on about it, but midfield, I mean, there's people whose opinion I respect have sort of mentioned, I've never seen him play, this Batache kid. I don't know what he's like, but what people have said that he's got something about him would, just to throw him in the middle of the park alongside one of them two, just a point of difference. Because at the moment, Ball and Cameron, there's nothing happening there.
How
Have you seen him,
frustrating to see those two in the team again together?
I think what you're saying here, I've seen him a little bit on at the end of last season. He come on, looks neat and tidy, but I think the manager probably thought, I'm going to play Ball and Cameron together on Saturday. We're playing Wycombe. It's going to be a bit of a bombardment on set pieces, and I would say that was the main reason why they both started that midfield, because of height for set pieces. And do you know what? In the end, we dealt with the set pieces quite well, so that part worked. But creativity, we're lacking in the midfield department at the moment. Maybe like a runner into the box as well, to join in attack. So sometimes when I see crosses going into the box, there ain't enough people in there. When you put people running into the box, it causes, a bit of mayhem in the opposition's defenders. And sometimes you just get a ricochet, and if you've got men in the box, it will drop to you and you can get a goal out of that. So we need a midfielder who can get into the box and, join in with the strikers. And because the strikers are not scoring really at the moment, you need someone from the other part of the pitch to try and help out while they're struggling. And we're not really doing that either, are we?
Okay, what's it like when you're a player and the team's not doing well? You're reading stuff in the paper about the manager being under the pump. What's the kind of, you can't seem to buy a win? What's the kind of...
Yeah, it's difficult. Your confidence is knocked, and what happens is, but do you know what? This season, it's because there's no crowds. Because if you're playing in front of that, say you're playing home on Saturday, Boxing Day against Swansea, big crowd there, you're playing all right, and then you go 1-0 down, and you can just sense, the whole crowd goes, and it's all like, because you've been on such a bad, here we go again. And it's hard, it's tough, because the crowd are feeling, and there's nervousness, there's anxiety, and it takes something or someone to just do something to get it all buzzing up again. Do you know what I mean? So that's what QPR need, and that's even at 0-0. They need someone to step up to the plate and sort of turn the corner and make something happen. And that's why I still think Osayi-Samuel is probably the main one who can make something happen on his own, where he can just get the ball and run with it 30 yards and beat a man or beat two men and a pull back for someone to score. But that's what it's like. You can feel the anxiety, but there's no crowd at the moment. But there still will be anxiety in the players' bodies and minds if they go 1-0 down. It's like, here we go again. But you've got to just keep going.
So is that the job of the manager at training now, or the captain, just to kind of, because I guess when you're not winning, people start pointing fingers at each other? And
well, there's always a bit of that. There would always be, behind, it's just human nature, behind people's back. And if the manager ain't picking a certain player and he's on the bench, and he'll be saying to the others, I should be playing. And it can get like that. When you're winning, it don't really get like that, because if you're on the bench and the team are winning, you can't really say anything. But if you're on the bench and the team ain't doing well, you'd be saying, the manager ain't got a clue. Why aren't I playing? He ain't doing it. And it can cause a little bit of backbiting and behind the scenes stuff. So they need to get winning quick, and the manager can't really deal. You can help, you can talk about it, but when you cross the white line on 3 o'clock on a Saturday and you go 1-0 down, then you're like, that's when I said you need someone to just step up the plate and be mentally strong and lead the team, really. And not just a few players.
Yeah, move on to the Swansea game. Then obviously, Kevin, you touched on it already. Wycombe are quite a limited team. Obviously, they've been struggling as well as QPR, but they managed to create some quite big chances against QPR, and obviously managed to get a point. I know, obviously, you mentioned about maybe the similar sort of styles. They're more sort of QPR styles might help the team, but I mean, it probably doesn't bode well that Wycombe are a much probably worse team than Swansea, but that QPR are still conceding a lot of chances to them.
This game, I think, against Swansea will suit QPR because it's a similar sort of style. It's just a case on who plays better, and have they got better players to play that style and better strikers. They've got Ayew, who's a good player, who's on big money still there, I think. I watched them against Cardiff a couple of weeks ago in the derby, was it last week? And they're a good footballing team. They pass it well, they're very calm. I think they play 3 at the back, if I'm right, wing back. So a little bit different, but they pass the ball, they keep the ball well, a bit like QPR. It's an interesting game. It's a case of who can, when the chances do come, who takes them and who's more clinical, because there will be a few chances.
Ben, we spoke obviously last week about the manager, and obviously the Wycombe result has added a lot more pressure onto him. We maybe sort of said, getting rid of him, it isn't maybe the right thing to do at this point. But I mean, what are your kind of thoughts on that? How long do you think he kind of gets to turn it around?
Well, I think the important thing to say first is that it is still possible for him to turn it around. I don't think anyone should think there's a point of no return, because we have seen managers at QPR and other clubs do this. I mean, if you think back to Southampton a year ago, they've just been absolutely walloped by Leicester 9-0 at home. Everyone said, well, Ralph Hasenhüttl's out of the job for sure. And they stuck with him, and look where Southampton are now. So he clearly has turned that around, and I think any manager can. With that said, yeah, there is a limit to how long you can let a run without a win or run of bad results go on. I think, personally, I don't think there's likely to be a change at this stage. I think you would look at the Christmas New Year programme and see how you get on with that, and then you might reassess it if things haven't gone too well. But that would be the way I would see it. I would say it's still possible to turn around if you change things. I don't think we can carry on just trying the same thing week in, week out, or twice a week. Same team, same formation, same system, same substitutes, whatever it is. So something's got to be different. But yeah, it's still possible for things to change for the manager. Whether they will, well, I think it goes without saying. A lot of it depends on how things go, firstly on Boxing Day against Swansea. And I mean, Kevin's pointed out the similarities with the style of play and so on. And you sometimes see strange results on Boxing Day. I don't know why, you just sometimes do. And I have a feeling somehow that might be one. And maybe the result is going to come. And luck plays a part as well. I mean, I think last week you said perhaps the points return hasn't reflected the performances. I think the last 2 games you'd say it definitely has. But at some point you think you're going to get a lucky one. And maybe that'll be Boxing Day.
Ian, do you agree with that about the manager, that he will get a bit more time to turn it around?
I hope so. I think last year I really enjoyed watching QPR last year. It was fun to watch them. They were really enjoyable. For the first time in a long time, QPR have had a team that had an identity. You knew what sort of football they were going to play and what you were going to get. And it was good. I enjoyed it. He's had a bulk of that attacking team taken out of him, out of that side. So, and they've had some bad luck this year, Woodwork has, things like that, games they've lost that they should have won, that kind of thing. But ultimately, it's a results business, isn't it? You can make all the excuses you want. If you're not winning games, you're going to lose your job. So, I hope Ben's right, and they grind one out against Swansea, because Norwich away, we've got a terrible record at Norwich. You're not thinking you're going to get much out there. But I mean, I do fear for him. I do fear if they lose to Swansea and lose to Norwich, I think, they creep into the bottom 3. I think, he could be in strife. But I hope I'm wrong. But, I like Warburton. I think he's a good manager. But, I mean, I'm touching on what Kevin said earlier on, he looked ashen after that Wycombe game in the post-match interview he did. He looked really under stress, under pressure. I know he's got this knee problem, which I don't, how much that's affecting him sort of day to day on the training pitch and health-wise, I don't know. But, hopefully they can grind something out on Boxing Day, and in the new year, kind of, emulate what they did, on New Year's Day last year and kind of, win 6-0.
That brings us nicely onto the predictions for the game then. Kevin, what do you think the score will be against Swansea?
I'm going to go 1-1 again.
Again? I mean, you said that last week, didn't you? And you got it right.
Right. I just feel... Yeah, 1-1.
What about you, Ben?
I can't keep saying the same thing as Kev because it would just get boring. So I'm going to say Rangers are going to get the result here. I'm going to say 2-1, 2-1 home win.
And Ian?
I'm going to go 1-1 as well.
Yeah.
I think it's a matter of how you play. If they play really well and get a 1-1 draw, and you say like the Watford game, I think that would be a big step forward. But you know, small steps. I think they're side Swansea.
You know, weirdly, I think they might actually win as well. I think 'cause they beat Swansea. I remember sort of this time around last season, wasn't it? They beat them quite heavily. I'm not sure if it was in the league or in the cup. I remember they beat Cardiff and Swansea quite heavily. So I think they could. I think they could be a surprise, but we'll see. But yeah, anyway, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you soon.